Hey, what's up guys? Jake Tech here, and as you can see, it's build day. But this build isn't for me. We're actually building Sarah her very first custom PC. So I didn't think we would find ourselves building a computer for Sarah, but she is over the MacBook. Well, she's still going to use the MacBook, but she's pretty much capped out on space, wants to run some more applications and stuff like that. And if I can convince her, maybe she'll get into some gaming as well. But I don't know, it's not looking too good so far. So for the most part, this build is just more about building a system that has more space for Sarah to store videos, photos, more applications. So she wants to get into the Adobe Cloud Suite, mostly like Photoshop and Lightroom. She's seen some of the editing that I've done in that and kind of wants to start editing in Lightroom as well. And lately I've been doing a lot of my editing in DaVinci Resolve. So I want to install that on this system too because it's a great editor and there is a free version out there for it. And is there anything else that you want to run on there, Sarah?
Maybe some CAD. That's about it.
So handling all the storage, so far we're just going to install a 1TB NVMe. And in this case, it's the Samsung 970 EVO NVMe SSD. So it's going to be a lot of storage, really fast. So that's what we're going to start with. And in this case, we always have room to expand. And as far as the case we went with, it is the Phanteks Evolve Shift 2. This is a case I've seen around and I've always wanted to build in one. And luckily we got the chance to right now. So yeah.
So what else do we have here?
We're going to be installing 16 gigs of the G-Skills Trident Z RAM. We have the Ryzen 2600. It's not the 2600. We have the Ryzen 5 3600. So I think this is going to be a really good CPU. It's 6 cores, 12 threads. I think it's going to be everything that you need to run those applications. AMD obviously has some more updated CPUs out there. Availability is a little scarce on them right now, and the price is obviously a lot higher, but this will be perfect for this build and what Sarah wants to run. And then housing all of that hardware is going to be the ROG Strix B550i, which is a really nice ITX gaming motherboard, but it has our M.2 support, has our RAM support we need, and it does have built-in Wi-Fi, which in our case we probably will use a little bit here and there until we get a hardwired solution. So that'll be a great motherboard for this build. Alright, and then Sarah, what do we got for our cooling solution?
We have the NZXT Kraken M22.
Yeah, so this is the M22 AIO from NZXT, the Kraken series. I haven't used any of the NZXT AIOs yet, but I know a lot of people that have and have had great luck with them. So as long as it fits properly inside the Evolve Shift, we should be good to go. Now I know it's not the most optimal radiator pump placement because in this case you really don't have a choice but to put the CPU pump block on higher than the radiator. So it's not optimal for performance, noise, longevity, but unfortunately in this case, unless you have something that is built into the radiator, that's the only way to really avoid that. But in our particular use case, I think it'll be just fine, as this system's not going to be running 24/7, so it should be fine, but we'll see how it goes. And lastly, we have the graphics card, which we're going to be using the RTX 2060. This is just the Founders Edition. You guys are probably familiar with this card. I had it in a couple previous builds on the channel. So this one is no longer in my end case build because that is now being turned into a server. So we don't need a graphics card for that. And honestly, I just couldn't find a card for Sarah's build. So this is what we're going with. This is going to be a fantastic card. As far as her monitors go, she's just got a 1080p panel right now, but maybe we'll be upgrading to 1440 or a second 1080p panel. So this thing will push those pixels just fine and do everything she needs it to do. Alrighty guys, with all of the hardware out of the way, I'm going to let Sarah kind of take the reins on this one and go ahead and get this thing built. So luckily Sarah has watched me build quite a few of my PCs, so she's got a pretty good idea what she's doing, or at least I think so. I'm pretty sure she does. So with all that out of the way, guys, let's get started. Alrighty guys, we are back. The build is complete. We finished it late last night. Overall the build went really well. It was a little bit trickier than I expected to mount up some of the core hardware. Like once we had the motherboard configured, we had the CPU installed, the RAM, the M.2. That was all fine, that went smooth. Mounting everything into this case was a little bit tricky. And I think it just comes down to, it takes a lot of finesse to get everything to fit properly. So that took a little bit longer than expected, but once we got everything seated properly, it was pretty smooth. And then from there was just wiring everything and doing some of the cable management. As expected, I still really love the looks of this case, especially when it's completed, built, and seeing it in person is just really cool. It's one of those cases where you're not necessarily going to be hiding a lot as far as like cables go and stuff, but it's more about how you can make it look nice. And it's got a really cool look because everything is just so packed into this very compact vertical form factor. There's very little wasted space inside this case. In our case, on the back side here, we got a little bit of room under the GPU because the 2060 just isn't that large compared to other GPUs on the market. But other than that, it's a really tightly packed rig, and I think that's why I also really like the look of it. So talking a little bit more about building in this case, and if you guys are thinking about going with the Evolve Shift 2, just some tips and tricks that I would recommend opposed to what I had done. First off, like I said, the difficult part was really just mounting in the core components. So mounting the GPU was a little bit tricky because we were just slightly off on certain areas. Getting the PCIe mounted into that riser bracket was a little bit tricky. This could be a lot easier too. From what I've seen, I didn't realize that you could actually take this bracket out. We do have the two securing screws here and then a thumb screw on the back side where the motherboard is. But I thought the other parts securing it were rivets, but apparently not. So this whole piece can come out and you can mount the card and put it back in. That's probably what the manual recommends, but we didn't read that. So, and then I have seen other people also take that graphics card bracket out completely. So I would recommend doing that. Another thing, going back to the other side, I would also recommend, we mounted the graphics card first, which I don't think was a bad play. And then I mounted the motherboard, but you want to make sure that you plug in that riser cable into your motherboard before you mount it. I ran into the problem where I didn't do that, and I didn't have enough room to turn that PCIe riser cable back around and plug it into the motherboard. It was just way too tight, so I had to pop the motherboard back out, plug in the riser cable, and then reseat the motherboard. So that part was a little bit tricky, but like I said, it just takes a lot of finesse to really get these components to fit in this case. I'm not sure if there is really an easier way to go about that part, but because what happens is the riser cable actually it's sandwiched in between the graphics card, then you'll have your riser cable on the other side of the frame, then it'll be behind the motherboard, so it just kind of sandwiches in between all those components. So it was a little tricky. Like I said, it's just really playing with it and trying to get everything to line up correctly, but once everything isn't being forced, it really does fit together quite perfect. So talking about our CPU cooling, which is the NZXT Kraken M22 AIO, it's a 120 millimeter AIO. I had no idea when we had ordered this that the pump is actually built into the radiator itself. And in a case like this, that really works to our advantage because if you guys recall me mentioning in the beginning of this video, having the pump at the highest point of because this is a closed loop system, an AIO, having the pump at the top of the loop isn't optimal because you'll also get air that potentially rises to the top, and you don't want your pump, sucking in a lot of air because it'll make more noise and the longevity, it just won't last as long. So luckily, I didn't even realize it when we purchased this AIO that the pump is built into the radiator. So now our pump is at the absolute lowest point of the AIO, and that is much more optimal than having it actually in the cold plate itself. So that worked out well, and like I said, I didn't expect it, so in the beginning of this video, you guys are probably scratching your heads like, Jake, the Kraken has the pump built into the radiator, which, like I said, I had no idea until I opened the box and saw that. So that was a pleasant surprise, and that works out much better for this particular case. Another thing that really helped out when mounting the AIO is the plate that Phanteks provides, this little magnetic strip that goes across the middle. It's mainly designed to hide cables that you might have right under your motherboard there. Or in our case, it really helped us secure the tubing for our AIO to make sure that it'll fit when we put the glass on. Because right now I don't have the glass on, and that's always a concern because these tubes aren't very flexible. They're pretty rigid, so trying to get it compressed into where we're not going to damage the AIO is a little bit tricky, but luckily, like I said, this really helped us secure it in there. It doesn't pinch. There's a nice little cutout for it, and it fits quite well. And then I ended up turning the radiator to where our outlets are on the back side of the case, and that just kind of reduced some of the excess tubing that we had, and it fit in quite well. So guys, that's pretty much it on this build. Sarah did most of it. She hooked everything up to the motherboard, and it was kind of a team effort between her and I to actually mount the motherboard with all of its components and the graphics card. So a lot of that didn't get caught on camera. So just because we kind of had some issues, and like I said, that was a little bit tedious trying to get it all to fit. But it worked out. We got everything in there. I don't have Windows installed yet on this system, but luckily last night when I finished all the cable management and put it back together, we did get a BIOS screen, and I was able to go into the BIOS. So, and everything looks pretty good. It picked up our hard drive, which is that 970 EVO. It picked up our 2 fans, and it does read that we have a AIO pump in the BIOS, so we're not getting any errors there. So yeah, everything went pretty well as far as that goes. So I don't think this is going to be the absolute end product of this build, as there is some more things we have in mind for modifications. Probably the biggest thing that I want to add to it, which I just don't have at the moment, I want to add a bottom intake fan. I didn't have something that I could confidently put in the bottom of this case that would really improve the airflow. I have some fans laying around, but they're not great. And maybe we'll do something like another Phanteks RGB fan. Or we might put in a fan from Noctua. I'm not sure yet, but we're going to try and get some sort of intake fan on the bottom. Because right now we really just have a cross-flow design where we have a exhaust fan up top, exhaust on the bottom for that radiator. So it kind of pulls air across the system and has it exit out this side. Which isn't bad, but I always like more and more airflow, and some intake would be nice. So we would kind of get an updraft from the bottom, bringing air in, and then it could be pulled out across the case itself. So I think that's going to be one modification we're going to make to this. We might do some custom cables in the near future. Sarah actually had a acrylic idea where we add some sort of acrylic panel to this build, because she does a lot of CNC work, and actually that's how I got this custom C-deck top on this bench. So we were thinking about something we can incorporate where she could do some CNC work to this to really give it that custom touch. We're not exactly sure yet what we'll end up doing with that, but we're going to keep kicking around some ideas and see what we come up with. Another modification I would really like to do to this build is on the back side here. It's a little bit dark, and I would like to showcase the graphics card a little bit more. So I would like to add some RGB strip lighting, maybe just coming down one side. I do have some from Phanteks. It didn't mount in real nice, so I might have to hot glue it to the case or something, because it's not a very flat, there's a lot of ins and outs to the metal on the inside here. And I can't get that magnetic RGB strip to lay real flat and wants to come up on certain areas, so I might just have to come up with a more custom method to install it, even if that is hot glue. But I would like to add some of that RGB back there. I think it would give it a nice touch, it wouldn't be too much, and it would showcase our graphics card a little bit more. Alrighty guys, so that is it for this build video. Like I said, next thing I'm going to be doing is installing Windows in some of our core applications. So I might make a video on that, what to do after you build your system, as far as from a software standpoint, what you should install first, stuff like that. I think that would be a really cool video. And we'll also be doing some different benchmark tests and stuff with this, and see how it does overall in gaming, video editing, photo editing, a couple different benchmarks, stuff like that, because I'm really curious to see how this Ryzen 3600 handles everything. And it's not the 3600X, because for Sarah, she isn't going to be doing any overclocking, so we just have the standard 3600. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to drop a like on it, and stay tuned for some more videos kind of related to this particular build, and hopefully more builds to come this year, as we've had a really great start to 2021 between the Ncase M1 NAS server build that I'm doing, and then this Phanteks Evolve Shift build. It's been a great year so far, and it's very early on, so hopefully we got some more videos coming up and some more builds coming up as well. As always, thank you for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.